Hello everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. So we have made it through another week of news that probably none of us are any the wiser or the better for having made it through. But before we get into the events of this past week, I do want to clarify a point from my last weekly roundup, and that's on the Ohio heartbeat abortion law. I thought that it had already gone into effect. It does not go into effect until July 11th. So still not like a super long amount of time before it goes into effect. I don't know if that's going to be enough time for anybody to mount a legal defense and actually get like a stay to make sure that the law doesn't go into place while it winds its way through the court system. But as of right now, we do still have, about 6-ish weeks before it goes into effect. Maybe a little longer than that. So I just wanted to go ahead and clear that up. So moving on from that to the latest heartbeat law. Well, actually the second latest heartbeat law, because now these are just coming like fast and furious. I don't know why every single state now all of a sudden seems to want to try to hop on this bandwagon. But the one that made the most news this past week is the Alabama heartbeat abortion law. And that one was signed into law last week. It does call for a total complete ban on abortions, which actually I just found out doing some research for something else. There's apparently only 3 abortion clinics in Alabama, like in the whole state. I did not know that. But this bill, or this law, would call for an utter and complete abortion ban. There's no gestational heartbeat. There's no 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever weeks. It's just full stop. And it doesn't go into effect until November. So it is 6 months out. So I know ACLU has already filed all these lawsuits. I think Planned Parenthood has filed lawsuits in all of these various states. So there is a little bit of time for this to work its way through the court system to see whether a court is going to strike it down as unconstitutional, which per Roe v. Wade, they should. So, but like I said in the last weekly roundup, I mean, it is likely that courts will strike these down. I'm not going to hold my breath and just automatically 100% assume that's going to happen. So that's why I think it is very important to keep an eye on these developments, just to see like exactly where we're at with each state, what's going on, so that we can all be better educated on what is and is not in effect in each of these states. So, like I said, goes into effect in November. There are no exceptions in the Alabama bill for rape or incest. So, total abortion ban, no exceptions for rape or incest. The bill does make it very, very, very clear, and they say it 3 times in the verbiage of the law, that women will not be criminalized for seeking and receiving abortions underneath the Alabama law. All criminalization will be on the doctors, and you would be looking at anywhere from, I mean, the sentencing guidelines are kind of up in the air right now, but you would be looking at anywhere up to 99 years in prison for performing an abortion. But like I said, women are not criminalized, and they harped on that fact to the point where I'm like, okay, we heard you the first time. But there is a very weird kind of exception in there. And actually, before I get to that, they do exclude ectopic pregnancies and non-viable fetuses. Those are still eligible for abortion. So there is a really interesting exception for the mental health of the mother. And this is an exception that I've not seen put in any of the other laws thus far. In fact, all the other laws have pretty much made it clear that unless a woman is in physical danger from her pregnancy, that abortion is a no-go, and that mental health is not going to be considered a criteria for determining whether a woman would be eligible for an abortion or not. The Alabama law states that if 2 doctors certify that a particular woman has a mental health issue that may cause her to do harm to the fetus, that she would be eligible to have an abortion under those circumstances. Now, some people have read this as something that could be a loophole for women who are pregnant via rape or incest, because you could plausibly claim something like PTSD or some other kind of trauma-based mental illness. And if you could get two doctors to agree that you are suffering from this mental illness, then you would be able to receive an abortion. How that would actually play out, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, a lot of the things in a lot of these bills are subject to A, whether or not these bills ever actually go into effect and people have to live under these bills, and B, how they would be interpreted in courts to kind of figure out, like, what are the boundaries here, like, what is and is not going to be permissible. But that is a very interesting exception that I have not seen any other law make. And like I said, it does potentially create that loophole. So I thought that was really, really kind of, I wasn't expecting to see that in that particular bill, like as draconian as the Alabama bill is, and punishing people for up to 99 years in prison for performing an abortion is pretty draconian, and it is putting all of the onus on the doctors, which feel however you want to feel about that. It's weird, I think. It's like an interesting little carve-out. I don't know what to think about that. Also, on the topic of the doctors, I don't know how this would play out, like as far as determining whether a woman has a mental illness that would cause her to injure the fetus, and what kind of liability would be on you as a doctor to make that determination, and whether it is something that is questionable or something that is challenged, if you would be held legally liable for that decision. Like I said, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that would have to be determined if and when these laws ever go into effect, and there's ever a case brought that involves any of these particular circumstances. So that is the Alabama law. Next one on deck is Missouri, which I know it has passed their House and their Senate. It has not been signed into law yet, but it is expected to be. I do not have full text on that law yet. I've not been able to find it yet. I don't know if it's been released. So I'm not entirely sure what all the contents of that law is. I will, as soon as I am able to get full text of it, I will probably do another live tweet stream of it, and I will, of course, discuss it here. But from what I've been able to gather, much like all of these other laws, it does not criminalize the women for receiving abortions. It puts the criminality on the doctors. And I think it's a felony charge. I think it holds between 4 to 14 years in prison. And their ban would actually be at 8 weeks. So it's a little above like the gestational heartbeat 6-week ban. It gives you a couple more weeks. And from what that has been reported, it seems like the Missouri bill is designed not so much to be a challenge to Roe v. Wade, but to actually like stand an actual court challenge. Like I said, I'm not entirely sure what's in the bill, so I will elaborate on that more when I know what's going on. But that seems to be the next one up. I think there's a couple of other states who are considering doing these sorts of bills. Like I said, it's really just something that's getting kind of crazy and out of control. Like this is no. I said it on the last weekly roundup, and I'll reiterate it. I'm not okay with this. Like I'm not okay with states passing laws that could potentially fuck with people's lives just to try to overturn Roe v. Wade. Like, this is not okay. This is not a way to treat your constituents. Whatever you personally may happen to feel about being pro-life or pro-choice, I would hope that we can all agree that the state fucking with people is not okay. Like, this is not fine. Like, this is something that does need to be watched. But since we're on the topic of how I feel about these specific laws, and about abortion in general, because honestly that seems to be where the conversation has been focused around, is people's opinion on abortion, and not so much people's opinion on states making these laws that are specifically as punitive as possible to prevent abortions, which I really wish the conversation was a little more over there instead of where it's at. But I understand that abortion is a very emotional issue for people. And it's one of those where it's it's been very weird for me to watch the discourse within the libertarian movement on this kind of move in really weird ways. And I will be the first to say that, as it stands right now, I am pro-choice. I am also very, 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 very pro keeping women from having unwanted pregnancies. I am very pro-prevention. And until the day comes where we can get that under control, where we can prevent unwanted pregnancies from happening in the first place, then yes, there does need to be some kind of stopgap in place. And I'm not down with these arguments that, well, you shouldn't have sex with a man unless you're willing to have a baby with him, because now you're pushing the standard of having sex with a man even past like marriage. Like, you can get married to someone and not really want to have babies with them right then, or you may not want to have babies at all. Any man's babies. So then what the hell are you supposed to do? Just not have sex until menopause? Like, that just, I don't understand that argument. Like, I wonder if people who say that thought it through to its logical conclusion. But what I would like to see is more of an emphasis being put on the prevention of unwanted pregnancies. Like, it's time for the pill to be available over the counter so that women can have access to it more easily than we do now, so that we can try to prevent some of these pregnancies. We need to have more just general knowledge of contraception education, not just sex education, but contraceptive education. Women need to know that they have these different options. Like, if the pill doesn't work for you, okay, cool. There's shots that you can get. Okay, that doesn't work for you either. You can go get implants. There's plenty of things you can do outside of just buying condoms. And that's another thing that I see people say. It's like, why don't you just buy condoms? It's like, or how about you promote female-based birth control so that women can take control of that particular situation by themselves and not have to rely on somebody else to do it for them. And it's just like, until the day where we have in this country more easy access to female-based birth control, and across the board, more education for both men and women of how to properly use contraceptives. There has to be something there. Like, I don't see a way around it. And I know this kind of takes out all of the emotion about this, and I know there's a lot of people who are pro-life. There are a lot of pro-life libertarians. I get it. There's a lot of people that think that life starts at conception and that is an autonomous human being living in there. I get you. I hear you. I understand your argument. My argument is, what do you want to do about the fact that there are women who have unwanted pregnancies? Like, I understand the pro-life argument. I'm not entirely unsympathetic to it. But to just scream at people that you think life begins at conception, that you think this is an individual that you do not have the right to aggress upon, like, that's not a solution to the problem. Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, I want to find a solution. I don't want women to ever have to have abortions. I don't want to live in a society where that has to happen. I want to prevent the pregnancies from happening in the first place. And I really wish the conversation would come around to that instead of arguing over when a woman can get an abortion, or who can get an abortion, or who can't get an abortion, or when a fetus is a person. Like, how about we talk about just not even getting to that point? Like, let's just not even go there. Like, I can't imagine having to make the decision whether or not to have an abortion. Like, that scares the shit out of me. Like, I don't want kids. I don't know what the hell I would do if I ever got pregnant, because I don't think I could go through with an abortion. Like, I don't think I could do it. So, it's just like, this conversation is just in a place that I wish we can move past discussing the symptom of the unwanted pregnancy, which is whether or not to have an abortion, and start discussing the root cause, which is there's an unwanted pregnancy. And now what do we do about that? Another thing that really bothers me about where the conversation is right now is two facts that libertarians generally acknowledge across the board in every other situation other than both abortion and immigration, because these are the two most emotionally hot issues in libertarianism pretty much across the board. But two truths that we generally acknowledge is that prohibiting something does not make it go away, and you cannot legislate morality. Even if there was a total ban in your particular state on abortion, that's not going to stop women from getting abortions. It's just going to make it harder and more dangerous and just make these women more desperate and be willing to go to further extremes in order to achieve what they want to achieve. I mean, we see that with literally everything else that is prohibited. I don't know why anybody thinks that abortion would be any different. Like, it's this weird blind spot that I'm not understanding why people have. And the other one is you can't legislate morality. And this is where I want to kind of talk to my pro-life people. And like I said, I get you. I hear your arguments. I understand them. But here's the thing. Not everybody feels the way you do about this topic. So, at what point is it okay for you to impose your particular opinion on this topic upon somebody else who does not feel the way that you do? Like, why is this the topic that we seem to forget that general principle on? And I get it. It's life or death. It's a child. I understand. But I think everybody needs to take a huge step back and rethink how far you feel like it is your prerogative and your right to go to tell somebody else what they can and cannot do with their body. And I was listening to the Reason podcast. They did one with Stephanie Slade, who is the managing editor of Reason, and Elizabeth Nolan Brown, who I just talked to in the last podcast, and she's an associate editor. And Stephanie is pro-life. She is a Catholic. She is pro-life. She is openly pro-life. But she made a very good point in that podcast about her particular beliefs as to how this should be handled. And that is that one can be pro-life, but not be okay with the state having an opinion on the topic or stepping in or handing down a dictate as to how women should and should not conduct themselves in this particular area. And for what it's worth, that's actually the official LP position too, not the pro-life part, but that it's not the state's place to be making laws about this, that it is a private decision. And to go back to Stephanie's point, which I do agree with, and that is that if you do want to get rid of abortion, then this is something that needs to be happening culturally. Like, this isn't something that the state can mandate. This is something that has to happen through just making the environment where either abortion is no longer needed, which is what I would like to see, or a situation where it is not considered an option just based on general morality, social mores, however you want to put it. And I can agree with that. Like, I can agree that the state doesn't have a place making these decisions. And that's also kind of what Roe v. Wade hinged on, was that the Supreme Court decided that the decision to get an abortion was a private one between a woman and her doctor, and that the states making laws one way or the other about it was a violation of the Privacy Clause and due process in the 14th Amendment. So, however you may happen to feel, be you pro-life, pro-choice, whether you're pro-life for yourself and pro-choice for everybody else, I think that there does need to be more talking to each other than versus at each other and over each other, because it's at this point right now where if you go online and you say that you're pro-choice, then all of a sudden, oh, you're a baby killer. Or if you're pro-life, then, oh, you don't care about women. You don't give a shit about women. You want women to suffer. And it's like, neither one of those is true. Like, taking it to these weird extremes, like pro-life people don't hate women. They just do not agree with the practice of abortion. Pro-choice people aren't wanton baby killers who want to run through the streets knifing down everybody's child. They have different views on bodily autonomy and privacy and what a woman should and should not be allowed to do with her body. Maybe if we can have something of a constructive conversation without name-calling or without saying that unless you believe X or Y, you're not a libertarian, which I've actually seen that both ways. I've seen people say that if you are pro-choice, you're not a libertarian. I've seen people say if you are pro-life, you're not a libertarian. So it's like, well, there's both, and all those people are still libertarians, so clearly you're incorrect. And there are very different views even within the libertarian movement. I mean, there's the evictionist argument, which I don't entirely love that argument. It's a little cold for me. I don't really like looking at abortion and human life in those sorts of terms. Like I said, there's pro-life people, there's pro-choice people, there's people in the middle, there's people who don't even take a stance on this at all and really don't care about abortion because they don't spend a lot of time thinking about it because their focus is in other places. So, yeah, I want to get to a point where maybe we can all unite over something, and I would like that something to be being pro-prevention. That would be my ideal. And I think that would be a good place to start, because I would hope that everybody who is pro-life feels the way I do about preventing unwanted pregnancies. Like, I should certainly hope that pro-life people don't just want women to get pregnant and have to carry babies just because reasons. Like, I mean, I've seen some really gross stuff on the internet over the past week too, not out of the libertarian movement, although there's been a lot of yelling, there's been a lot of noise, there's been a lot of light, there's been a lot of heat, there's been a lot of discussion, some of it very nice and sane and rational, and some of it a little less. But I've seen people coming out, like, I think the worst one I saw was Matt Walsh did a tweet talking about how a 12-year-old who was raped by her dad shouldn't be able to get an abortion, because if she did, then that would eliminate all of the proof that that crime happened, and then her dad would be enabled to do it again. And I'm like, okay, first of all, that's fucking gross. Second of all, it's called a DNA test, fuckwit. Get with the times. You can do a DNA test on a fetus and know who fathered it. Like, what the hell? And there's been so many. There's been, oh my God, people blaming rape on the victims, which I thought we were all clear. That is a no-go. We don't do that. You don't say that if you don't want to be raped, then don't wear certain things or don't go certain places. Like, I thought we were all clear on that. Maybe not. I mean, it's been wild. But yeah, that is where we are at on that. And of course, this conversation will continue because there's going to be more heartbeat laws. And so there's going to be more of all of this. And all I want is just a rational discussion on this. That's really all I would like to see come out of this, is for all sides to sit down and try to figure out a solution to a problem. That's all I want. But before we leave off of the topic of the heartbeat laws and the very stupid, dumb, non-productive reactions to the heartbeat laws, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about Alyssa Milano's sex strike. That wasn't. She tweeted, I believe it was, God, was it last Sunday? No, it had to have been after last Sunday. But she was proposing going on a sex strike until, I don't know what the sex strike was exactly supposed to accomplish, until men, I don't know, rise up and do a thing. I'm not entirely sure what the men who were the victims of the sex strike were supposed to do. This was never really clear to me. Like, Are they supposed to go to these states and do what exactly? Like, get elected to the state senates and overturn these laws? Like, I don't know what was supposed to happen, but of course everybody lost their shit over it because it was funny. Like, nobody, I don't think, took it seriously. Like, we all pretty much just spent the day dunking on Alyssa Milano, which, at least that was one thing that brought everybody together. Even, like, normal people and rad femmes. Like, even the rad femmes were like, this is stupid. Even Jessica Valenti was like, this is stupid. Like, you're dumb. You're really dumb, Alyssa. And it was just kind of a really stupid Twitter moment that happened. But just so indicative of where the conversation is on the topic of abortion and these heartbeat laws, and just how fucking ridiculous it really all is. And it's just, it's going to continue being ridiculous. The conversation's never going to be what I want it to be. I know that. But I can hold out hope, and I can keep agitating for the conversation to be what I want it to be. Maybe one day we can have a serious discussion about abortion that doesn't involve grossness or yelling or stupid publicity stunts. But moving on from that, I do want to touch on a non-abortion related topic before we close out the episode, and that is the Justin Amash tweet thread that he put out this morning. I believe it was this morning. It was either late last night or this morning. I saw it this morning. But he did a long tweet thread, and it starts out with the fact that Amash feels that Barr did mischaracterize the Mueller report, and Amash feels that there is grounds for impeachment in the report. And he specifically says that he did read the whole report. Like, I'm assuming it's the redacted report. I don't think anybody has access to an unredacted report. And so he did this long tweet thread, kind of giving more opinions rather than conclusive facts as to how he came to this conclusion, which I'm sure he will elaborate on in the future at some point, I'm assuming. But of course, this went wide because it's a Republican saying that he feels that there is grounds for a Trump impeachment. And so the reaction has been pretty much what you would expect it to be. Of course, the Trumpelos are like, oh my god, look at Justin Amash, that fucking attention whore. Like, look at him. He's trying to suck up to leftists. And it's like, okay, first of all, do you even know who this dude is? Like, do you all know who Justin Amash is? Justin Amash does not care about leftists. Justin Amash is a strict constitutionalist. Justin Amash is a possible, maybe, hopefully, maybe contender for the Libertarian nomination for president in 2020? Maybe. But, and of course the opposite reaction is that obviously certain people latched onto it who do advocate for impeachment. Me, personally, I don't agree with his assessment that Barr mischaracterized the Mueller report, but, I mean, that's fine. He's allowed to have his opinion. I'm allowed to have mine. We don't have to agree on everything. I don't have to agree on 100% of things to like somebody. Unlike Charlie Kirk, this, I guess, Justin Amash was his favorite until this happened, and now he's not his favorite anymore, and I'm sure Justin Amash is just crying into his beer over that somewhere. Okay, but it was interesting because, like I said, it's a Republican saying that he thinks impeachment should happen, and I'm sure there will be more discussion on that going forward when and if he does elaborate on that position and kind of cites more concrete facts or certain sections of the report that he feels like Barr did mischaracterize, or that certain instances that he does feel rises to the level of impeachment, which he does actually make the point in the tweet thread that you don't really need a reason to impeach a president. Like, you can kind of start impeachment proceedings just whenever the hell you want, honestly. It's a good idea to have a very good reason, because of course if you start impeachment processes on a president, you want to have at least some hopes of success, otherwise you just look like an idiot. But he did make that very valid point, and For what it's worth, I still don't think impeachment proceedings are going to happen. I mean, I've not seen anything out of Pelosi or out of Hoyer that indicates anything to me that they're even remotely thinking about it. I mean, you still have the certain wings that are agitating for it, but I still don't see it happening. I really don't, especially the further we get into this year and the closer we get to at least the beginning of next year. Like, if it doesn't happen by January of 2020, it ain't happening, because there's no way they are going to risk spending what would be the rest of the 2020 election season discussing impeachment and doing impeachment proceedings and making it be all about Trump and Russia and all of that. So, like I said, the clock is ticking on this, and I don't see the political will there still. So, on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. If you did make it this far, thank you as always. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.